It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, General Amidror, for this very kind introduction and for the invitation to be here at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. People made a lot of comparisons here now between here and the weather in New York or Washington. One thing that is, I guess, uniting, at least from this perspective this morning, Washington and Jerusalem is having great think tanks like the Jerusalem Center, and also I can tell by the atmosphere, by even these books here, that and also of course your reputation preceding you. So thank you again, Jacob, and all of you for being here. What the title was is really combining two major issues that seemingly are not related: the Iran problem and the Palestinian problem. However, they are connected in the I would say in the very root in many ways, but not in terms of affecting the Israeli foreign policy. We have made a strategic decision, not I think for many years now, not just this government but successive Israeli governments, to really decouple the Palestinian problem with the Iranians. In fact, just to paraphrase on what Ben-Gurion, our founding father, said back in World War II, when we had to fight the White Book. Anybody knows what the White Book was? Preventing Jews to make Aliyah, to come to their home, and fighting the Nazis. He said, we will fight the White Book as if there was no war with the Nazis, and we'll fight the Nazis as if there is no White Book. So the same thing here. Israel is very much determined to move ahead and to solve, if possible, the Palestinian issue as if there is no Iranian threat, just as we are part of the international community. We are very much determined to remove the Iranian threat as if there is no Palestinian issue. This is something which has to be understood. However, I did mention that they are connected in the root, and this is in a very negative way, because if we are to proceed with a viable diplomatic and political channels and dialogue and process with the Palestinians, we must move the obstacles that arise. And we see the obstacles in a few ways. First of all, we see the terror organizations, which have been successfully in the past tried to and indeed derailed the process before through Hamas, or whether it's Hezbollah or Islamic Jihad or a few other of the renegade terror Palestinian organizations, which get support from the Iranians in an ever-increasing pace and volume and intensity. Just an example that I think was revealed this morning is that Hamas in Gaza, after this cast-led operation, not only it has been able to replenish all its losses in equipment, explosives, and all the military stuff that it has, but much upgraded, ever increasing range. We know that they have tried, and they do obtain missiles now that can reach 60 kilometers. 60 kilometers here are strategic ranges. Just think that Tel Aviv and the vicinity is under the range of Hamas. Hamas is being almost exclusively being supported by Iran in terms of money, in terms of training, in terms of equipment. The same thing is with Hezbollah. Other terror organizations, Hamas and Iran, we know, are trying to actually undermine all, certainly most, but I would say all, the Sunni governments in our area. So if indeed we do want to have a better prospect for dialoguing without the threat of terror and extreme ideology and incitement, it would be very, very important to curb and the Iranian influence and penetration here. Now, I said that we decouple it, and indeed we are making efforts with the Palestinians. Senator Mitchell was just here yesterday meeting with the Prime Minister. Secretary of State was here only 2 or 3 days ago. And I believe that the offers that we have made are far-reaching towards the Palestinians. We do want to see a dialogue with them. It is our interest, as well as it's their interest, and also the Arab countries' interest and beyond. We do believe that it's not a zero-sum game. It's not do or die. On the contrary, we believe that we should move as fast as possible on multiple tracks. And this is why trying to single out one issue, like settlement, was the wrong thing to do, not just only from a moral point of view, but from a political, technical point of view, because if you just reduce the entire process into a one problem or one issue, which Palestinians have very strong views about it, we have very strong views about it, but if you do it and reduce it as the single most important issue, then you don't have much leverage and flexibility to move ahead and to do some quid pro quo. I believe that today there is a better calibration by the international community regarding this issue. I think the expectations now should also be adjusted, not just in Israel, but also in the entire region and even beyond. And I suffice to say that if there are any questions later on about settlements and where we are, I'll be happy to answer. But certainly, this is one of the topics to be discussed, as many other topics of territory and resources and sovereignty and independence and demilitarization and what is euphemistically called the right of return and Jerusalem and many, many, many other things. Terror, incitement, recognizing Israel for what it determines itself. We do believe that just like the Palestinians, we also have the right to self-determine ourselves, like all the other nations. Issues of many, many characteristics will have to be put on the table. And just to show you the volume, it's just a very narrow list that I enlisted right here. So we believe that that political dialogue with the Palestinians is very important. Could have started long ago. We have wasted 7 long months, not because of our doing. We see it more than strange that the dialogue was disconnected. In fact, the same Palestinian Authority that had a very intensive dialogue with our predecessor government is still there in power, and nothing has really changed except administration in Washington and the government in Israel. Is this a reason enough to change the rules of the game or to start preconditions? I don't think so. And I'm glad that this issue is now better understood everywhere and put in a much, I would say, more realistic perspective. So if anyone thought that they could take advantage of this new geopolitical situation or political situation here in Israel and try to paint us into a corner, that's not the right approach. It doesn't show good faith and not seriousness about moving ahead in the process and trying to really look at it from a win-win situation. However, so what do we suggest now? First of all, since the Prime Minister Netanyahu was elected and his first day in office was to offer a meeting with Mr. Abbas without preconditions. Same was with the Foreign Minister Yvette Lieberman, myself, many of the Israeli officials are still waiting to hear, even in low levels. Unfortunately, there are no meetings with the Palestinians, but it's not because of our choosing. Secondly, we say, and we look at the picture, as I say, with trying to use multiple tracks. And we believe that the first, which is ongoing, is the capacity building. By the way, these tracks are kind of a distant reminiscence of the roadmap to peace that for some reason nobody talks about. I myself, which had this pleasure or honor or whatever you want to use it, was involved in accepting the roadmap in 2 or 3 governments away, do believe, I'm talking now personally, not for the government, that this is something which was universally accepted. We don't have to invent the wheel every time, and this was something which has also an intrinsic logic and value into it to move ahead. But let's say that right now we put it aside. There are 3 tracks that are in different stages of evolution, but they should go simultaneously. First of all is the capacity building. And we very much appreciate the American involvement, General Dayton work in the Palestinian Authority. We very much appreciate the European Union with the UPOL caps, with also helping the rule of law and law enforcement norms and teachings in the Palestinian Authority. There should be many more aspects that will really build a transparent Palestinian culture of governance, with the right institutions, with the separation of powers, with the rule of law, and of course with everything that it entails, biting press and whatever have you, because this is something which is not just an expectation from Israel, but it's for the entire globe. Because the last thing we all need is another failed state in a region, certainly not a terror state. So this is something which is a precondition, but not precondition in the sense of negotiations, by the way. I want to make it very clear, because we are very consistent. Just as we say we don't want any conditions, political conditions foisted on us, we do the same thing with the others. So negotiations without preconditions. But I say that if we are to engage in an historic exercise of almost unprecedented here in the area, talking or maybe creating a new entity, a new state, which never, by the way, existed before, we have to look at it from all perspectives. And yes, we would like, not just for Israel's benefit, but for the entire international community, we would like to see a normative state which can take care of itself, which is responsible towards its people, but also towards the nations, and abiding by all international norms and laws. So this is something that has to start now. And in a way, if there's anything that now promotes or facilitates any political solution, is what they do now with it, building the institutions, with the Europeans and the Japanese help and others. The second track is the economic track. We also believe that changing the situation altogether in the Palestinian Authority is not just something which is needed on a humanitarian basis. We do want to see Palestinians live with the same standard of living which merits any and every human being. This is their right, and to the extent possible we are helping. Also, this government, since it took office, has done a lot in this respect by allowing access and movement, in many cases taking risk, although it's a calculated risk, but we are willing to take it. I hope it will not be abused, because it's very quick that things can be put in reverse. But as far as our policy, as far as our intention, as far as our ideology, is to really allow the Palestinians maximize their benefits, their potential, and with our help. Here, I must say that we're very disappointed yet, and I think we're not the only one in the international community disappointed with the Arab countries, because here I think the Arab countries could do much more. First and foremost is Saudi Arabia. Today, I believe that if you look at the Palestinian Authority, and by the way, there is a great change in all leading indicators, unemployment down, inflation, growth rate, not our statistics, but World Bank statistics that now on successive, they have a path of about 8% GDP growth, at least in Judea and Samaria. Gaza, of course, is a separate issue, which we may discuss later. And tourism is up, the economic activity is up. But in order for it to be really sustainable, in order to create hundreds of thousands of jobs, which can easily be done, we need a kind of a Marshall Plan, but really build an industrial base. And to do that, we all, Palestinians, need foreign investments. Today, unfortunately, looking at the economic situation worldwide, the money is not with our allies, not with Europe, not with the United States, even Japan. I met a few weeks ago the special envoy of Japan to the Middle East, and he said, yeah, they also have economic problems, although they're helping with projects. Where is the money today? And first and foremost in the Gulf countries. If you look at Saudi Arabia with the trillions upon trillions of dollars that they have from exporting of oil, they certainly could allow some money to go into the Palestinians in a way which will be conducive to the economy in a fast track. I believe, my estimate, which is a very conservative one, that $10 billion now in the Judea and Samaria and the Palestinian economy would do marvels, miracles there, almost bring the Palestinians to a level of an OECD country, because they have the capabilities, they have know-how, and also, you know, there is some synergy between their economy and our economy, and we can certainly work together. We are determined to work together. This economic development, I mentioned before, is not just a matter of their human rights, but also will be very, very helpful in changing the atmosphere here and being very, very helpful towards a political dialogue. And this also will help create peace between people. We don't want to see just peace between governments or between rulers. This is not something that is normative or is desirable. We would like to see people to people. We would like to see, you know, when the time comes, a European type arrangement here. That the border is only a border on the map, where Israelis can go anywhere and the Palestinians can go anywhere, and indeed having many synergies over there. Also, we believe that the peace cannot be imposed. This is why government to government is not enough. Peace should be created, and it should start in the ground level, in the people to people economy, culture, and all the civil activities that we can think of. So we talk about capacity building, we talk about economic cooperation and build-up over there, and I believe these are two strong foundations which can help. What all of us wish to see is the third foundation, which is the political dialogue. But if you keep the political dialogue isolated from the other two, that doesn't work, or vice versa. So this is why we call upon a political dialogue which will be simultaneous to the other two and not hold any track hostage to the other two. If we can make progress on one, we shouldn't just wait for the others to follow suit. On all these issues, on the capacity buildings, as you know, we have already been working, and it's moving. Not the pace that we would like to see, but the direction is there. The economy, we are still waiting, although we have done a lot. And the political one, we're waiting for the Palestinians just to move forward, to just sit with us. And I believe that notwithstanding the political complications now in the Palestinian Authority, whether there will be elections or will not be elections, whether everything will be put off or not, I believe that within a few months we could see some kind of a dialogue starting. Certainly it is our intentions. We are very, of course, cautious, because we have had experience in the last 16 years where we've tried different tactics, whether to go incrementally, or whether to go right into the core issues, and all failed. I don't want to put fingers here now, but since we are in a very respected academic institute, I'm just talking about the facts and the ramifications. This is why we have to be very, very cautious when we talk about this this process. As I mentioned, we talked about some, let's say, internal problems whether on the political side now within the Palestinians, but there are also some external problems. First and foremost is Iran, and this takes us into the second topic. And Iran, really, if you look at it, and I do not start with the nuclear issue, because in my mind, the nuclear ambitions of Iran is not an end in itself. It's just a means to get into what they want. And what do they want? Let's see. I mean, now don't judge by my thinking, but just let's judge their actions. Today, everything bad which goes in the Middle East starts in Iran, and the gateway of Iran to the Middle East is Syria. Case in point, Lebanon. The only threat to the Lebanese people, to the Lebanese government, is not Israel, is not the West, is not anything that I can think of, except the Hezbollah. What is the Hezbollah? Hezbollah is an Iranian organ. And Hezbollah, I would say more than that, Hezbollah does not represent Lebanese, but rather Iranian interests. If we move a little bit south and we look into the Palestinian Authority, the main obstacle now for the Palestinian Authority to be viable in any way or shape is the Hamas, which held what the Palestinians call a coup d'etat back in January 07. And who is Hamas? Today, although it's a Sunni organization, their backers and supporters are undeniably the Iranians. If we move even to other countries in the region, I see a very distinguished representative for a very important country, with whom we have a strategic partnership and peace, Egypt. And you've all seen the publication a few months ago about this very, very large scope terror ring in Egypt that was operated by Hezbollah and Iran. The same things go in Morocco, the same thing goes in Yemen, the same thing goes in the Gulf, including in Saudi Arabia. But it's not just there. It's also trying to recruit Israelis here and helping Islamic Jihad and other terror organizations that to perpetrate terror here in Israel. But it doesn't end only in the Middle East. If you look at their operations in other continents, Africa, Latin America, you see that they have really a global reach. We saw their capabilities back in 1992 when they bombed the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires, and then 1994 when they bombed the Israeli army, the Jewish army at the Jewish Federation building in Buenos Aires. By the way, the one which was one of the perpetrators was one by the name of Wahidi, today the defense minister of Iran, and has an Interpol injunction by initiated by Argentina to catch him. So, and they're still there, and they're still there in an ever increasing intensity. Unfortunately, today they have a major ally in the name of Hugo Chavez, which turned actually Venezuela into kind of a front base for the Iranians in the Latin American continent. So we see that this is a country which has ambitions on the global reach, not just the regional reach. Coupled with that, you look at their delivery systems, and the delivery systems that they have already now, are quite capable of reaching Europe, covering, of course, the entire Middle East, more than enough, 2,500 kilometers. On the drawing board, they have even much more, 5,000 and 10,000. So the intentions here are very clear. If you add into that, I would say this is the foundation of a very, very radical regime with a very, very fanatic and extreme ideology. We do understand the implications and the danger to world security and peace. And when you have this as a basis, before you talk even about the nuclear issue, you understand the explosiveness and you understand the magnitude of the threat which the world has not faced probably since World War II. Our policy here, of course, we are a member of the international community. I believe that the talks that were initiated in Geneva and Vienna, led by the United States and the other P5, is a good thing. I believe that this also, in our perspective, puts Israel in its natural position, which is, we have never seen ourselves as a leader of the international community. With all humbleness, we have to admit that, and certainly not to solve world problems. And Iran is a world problem, and there are the institutions and there are the powers who have enough stake to do it without any involvement from Israel. So in a way now we are in the back seat together with all other 192 member states of the United Nations, hoping and praying that dialogue will be successful, so that the result will be no more enrichment in Iran, and of course with very effective and penetrating monitoring mechanism, which will be verifiable, which will be trustworthy, and which will be of course accepted. So this is where we are now. I think that also, just to sum up the issue of Iran, I mean, I have delineated the threats, but I think also something which is very, very important to realize as we come, as an international community, to negotiate with Iran. Iran does not have too many cards as they try to exhibit or make an impression that they possess. Iran is a very vulnerable country from a political point of view, from a social point of view, and suffice to just mention very briefly the riots last summer following the election results, which obviously were rigged. But also it's a very, very weak country economically, which could not really sustain long-term economic sanctions, which can really grind the entire economy into a halt and will not help the survivability of this regime, which I believe this is the #1 objective that they have at this moment. So to sum up this part, I would say that the policy should be transferring the dilemma from us as international community to the Iranians. If today the dilemma is still ours, and again I'm talking about the generic international community, whereby the Iranians continue to violate all the resolutions of the UN Security Council, some under Chapter 7, all international norms, all their commitments under the NPT, and we have the dilemma. And the clock is still running, and the dilemma is how to stop them. That should be reversed, whereby no longer the dilemma is ours, but theirs. That is, if you continue, then there is a price. So far, there was no price that was exhibited to them. And I believe once there is a price, which is very well explained to them, firstly, and secondly, once they will believe in the resolve, in the unity of purpose and in the unity of mind and policy of the international community, I do believe that this regime, taking care of its own survivability, will probably make the right choice. But the dilemma should be theirs and not for the international community. And I only can hope that everybody will come together understanding that this is an interest that unites us all. Thank you very much. No questions? That's fine too.
Now is the time for questions, and please identify yourself. This is for the history. Identify yourself and please short questions so the Ambassador Ayalon will have the opportunity to answer long answers. Please, the lady.
כבוד השר, תודה רבה. אני סגן שגריר של שוודיה.
נעים מאוד.
נעים מאוד. Thank you very much for your messages. I have a question with regard to the Goldstone handling. You said that Israel is prepared to resume peace negotiations as per. Now, how will the handling of the Goldstone report in New York affect that preparedness? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, the Goldstone report, unfortunately, can, if is adopted in the United Nations and further action is going to take place, is going, I think, to affect all of us, not just Israel. We have to understand that what we see here is a complete abuse and mockery of international institutions and regime. You know, whether if the ICC or the ICJ or the Council of Human Rights were designed really to make a better world in terms of fighting discrimination and poverty and fight for freedom of speech and women empowerment, and really isolate terrorists and aggressors, we see quite the reverse. We see that because of numbers, that countries which are not in the least democratic, let's say, which are not quite bent on values and practices that we would all expect in the 21st century, they are the ones who politicize and make political decisions. If in the Council of Human Rights you have more than 50% of all debates are just about Israel, not in many other places, and I don't want to mention so many other areas of conflict and infliction in the world, it says something. And if they have the numbers, you know, it's a tyranny by numbers, and I don't think that this is what the Human Rights Council was designed, nor the UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly, nor the ICC or anything else. The danger in the Goldstone report is that, General Amidror mentioned there's going to be an important debate in Brandeis. I don't want to go into the report, but the implication is that you strip away, or there is an attempt to strip away the right for self-defense from democracies, and in way to give it to terrorist organizations. That's it. So the implication is not just for Israel, but for every country which participates in trying to make a better world, whether it's in Afghanistan or whether it's in Iraq or whether in Africa. So coming here to this, what we want to see a peace process, we have not made a precondition. I mean, we just try to caution and to flag out what is we see a danger to the entire international community on this. There are also some practicalities here. You know, if the Palestinians are trying to make or to engage with us in a dialogue, and they expect us to do some gestures, and we have been doing gestures, and at the same time they attack us in all international fora, it's not consistent. So of course it not only leaves a bad taste, but more than that. But as I say here, as we do not ask them for or we do not accept any preconditions on us, we don't make it as a precondition, but certainly this is something that if indeed the Palestinians would like to really embark on historic reconciliations, that's not here on the ground only, but also in international forum.
Minister, just before Foreign Minister Lieberman's visit to Latin America, you also visited Latin America and attended a session of the Organization of American States. How much are the American states aware of Iranian penetration and subversion in Latin America, like Hezbollah, terrorist cells on the Venezuelan-Colombian border, and how much they are concerned about this situation? And the second question is, you referred to Hamas receiving missiles from Iran, but there have been press reports about Hezbollah receiving one-third of the missiles from Syria. So how does this reality reconcile with the idea of Israeli-Syrian peace negotiations?
Thank you. Yes, to a very short answer, yes. In my visit to Latin America, in Mr. Lieberman's visit to Latin America, yes, it is quite evident that not only they are aware, but they're very much concerned. Most of the countries there, and suffice to stop here. On Syria, you're absolutely right. As I said, Syria is a gateway to Iran, for Iran to the Middle East. Iran wouldn't be able, actually, to do what they do in Lebanon or even in the Palestinian Authority in Gaza without the help of Syria. And of course this also doesn't correspond with what occasionally we hear from Syria, that they would like to have a dialogue. And of course we would be very happy to have a dialogue. I believe that again, based on or benefiting from the experience, the dialogue should be direct, enough to beat around the bush and look for mediators anywhere else. We know that if you're serious and you want to move forward, sit with us. I mean, there's nothing, although there is an ongoing here HINI, what is called the swine flu, but I can assure you that the Syrians will not catch anything by sitting with us. We sit with Palestinians, we sit with many others. I think that would show seriousness on their part, respect, and just as we want to respect them, and we do, we expect them to respect us. This is something very important. Now, secondly, of course, if they are indeed to engage in a dialogue, doesn't correspond. You cannot hold the stick in its two ends by talking peace and waging war. And here, this is not a precondition, because it is only a normative conduct, whereby if you negotiate, you do not fight. And although they are fighting us indirectly, it's still the same results and the same meaning. So if they are serious, first and foremost, they should stop arming the Hezbollah. They should stop their involvement in Lebanon and in Hamas. Other 8 terror organizations that reside in Damascus, including training camps of terror organizations in Syria. If they will stop that and come clean-handed, they will find us ready.
Mr. Deputy Ambassador, Mr. Deputy Minister, Dan Dyker, the Director of the Institute. You are confusing with Ambassador. A question about Israeli diplomacy. The cornerstone of the American position under the Bush administration with regard to the Palestinian-Israeli issue was the Bush letter of April 14, 2004. And of course, that letter was a quid pro quo for Israel's leaving Gaza in 2005. The letter, of course, committed the United States to defensible borders for Israel, to major population centers for Israel, and on the refugee issue, suggested that all Palestinian refugees would return to the future Palestinian states.
Rather than Israel.
Rather than Israel was the language. Now, since then, it's become very clear, both publicly and privately, that the Palestinians have gone way beyond that in the Fayyad plan, in the public statements, that their absolute position would be a state on the June 4th, 1967 lines, including in Jerusalem. And what it appears that the American administration that has made no mention of the Bush letter.
What is the
question is Israel's position, does Israel still hold by the principles of the Bush letter, which were confirmed by Congress, as well as at Crawford in 2005?
Thank you, Danny. No, it's a very important question. You know, today, I look at the date, is November 3rd, which means yesterday was November 2nd, Bet B'November. Bet B'November, yes, was the Balfour Declaration. Why do I say that? Because I do believe, and I speak now as an observer, that the Bush letter from 14th of April 2004, history will look at it and regard it as important as the Balfour Declaration was. Because if the Balfour Declaration talked about the principle of a Jewish state in its homeland here, in Zion or in the land of Israel, without actually depicting the contours, then the Bush letter is the one which will determine, whenever it is, 5 years or 50 years, I don't know, the borders. So certainly, again, it has not come into a discussion yet in the government, but both, as Israel is a democracy, just like the United States, you know, there is a succession of policies, and of course this letter was also overwhelmingly adopted by two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. So certainly this is, in my mind, a cornerstone of any policy to the future.
Yes, sir, please. Identify yourself.
Ethan Browner from the New York Times. Nice to see you, Danny. Two questions. One is, you said that the Israelis had made far-reaching offers to the Palestinians. I wonder if you can give us some details about those, as much as you're willing. And the second is that you spoke of the roadmap as something that you approved of and generally was a good thing. For years, the problem with the roadmap was that the first part of it, neither side was living up to its obligations. The Palestinians were not dismantling terror, and the Israelis were not freezing settlements. The Palestinians say today is we've actually dismantled terror, and now you're not living up to your part. Could you comment on that?
Yes, first of all, I would point out Gaza. The Palestinians also, you know, their commitment was to outlaw all terror organizations, first and foremost Hamas. This has not been done. Issues of incitement and still, you know, it's a work in progress. I don't want to take away what they deserve, and they do deserve some credit of what they do, absolutely, and we would like to encourage them to continue. But the roadmap, I think one of the principles, which was also an overruling one, but it's an important one, is that it was an incremental, a process which is judged and based on results, on performance. I think the letterhead is performance-based roadmap to peace, and I think this is the way to move ahead, and not to impose or some kind of artificial dates. This is what I really believe. And yes, Israel also has to do some, but it is very difficult to do it in the absence of any context or any negotiations. We say here that you don't cut the cat's tail, you know, 5 times. It's better to cut it, you know, once when you have everything together.
The first question was what your far-reaching offers were.
Ah, well, they know it. And I'm not sure I'm at liberty to say, except that we are,
We won't tell.
Really?
well, I think the Americans know it, I'm sure the Palestinians know it, and suffice to say that no preconditions from our side, so there's a lot there.
Please. And identify yourself.
My name is Baran, and I am the Honorary Consul of Poland in Jerusalem. Mr. Ayalon, you said that the nuclear issue is only a mean, not a target, finally, not tactics, but not a strategy. So what is exactly the strategy? Do the Iranians themselves know what is their strategy? Threatening the world, blackmailing it, creating their hegemony here in this area, or there is something that they don't know by themselves? And what the research which was done by the Americans, by the Israelis, show that what is the final target of the Iranians?
Thank you. I take at face value at what they say. And they talk about the hegemony here. They talk about the return of the, what is it, the Mahdi, the 12th, right? The 12th. And they claim to have direct contact with Allah, and that what they have been preordained is to really take over and make sure that we have a very monolithic area in the Middle East, run by Sharia as they interpret it, according to the Shia laws, and they also believe that the glorious days of Islam is still ahead. They look back into the 11th century, 9th century, and so this is exactly what they say. And I think this is the apprehension that all governments here have from their intentions.
If this is the problem, how can you negotiate with them? There is no an equal level to talk to them.
Well, I do believe that although there is a very strong element of this extreme ideology, there is also an element of rationality there, whereby they want to continue to survive as a regime, the Ayatollahs. So this is why I believe that enlisting a price for them, I think, would make a lot of impression there.
Hi, Ambassador. Mike Tobin, Fox News. You mentioned vulnerabilities of Iran and the desire to transfer the dilemma back to Iran. What are the vulnerabilities? How would you exploit them in Israel's best interest?
In Israel?
Yeah. No, in Israel's best interest. How would your government exploit these vulnerabilities?
Well, you know, we have our own discussions with our friends and allies. You know, we have deep strategic dialogues with European countries, with the United States, with many other countries, and of course we discuss, not just sharing analysis and intelligence, but also you know, sharing the different contingencies. And here, I believe first and foremost is that the Iranians have to hear, you know, that they must hear what would be a price if they continue with this intransigence. They have not heard that yet, and I believe once they do, I think that they will make some changes in their policies, because right now, near as I can tell, is that they are really trying to throw their weight around. They're using a lot of bravado, and they try to make the impression that they hold many cards which they don't really have. But there is this message that has been consistently going on for the last years, not just last negotiations, that Iran cannot be stopped. This is what they say, that, you know, you better get used to it, that we will become that have nothing, there's no similarity here. And I say this is wrong. It's not preordained, it's not God-given that Iran will become nuclear. They're not on a deterministic path, and they can be stopped. And I think they have to understand that we understand, and that we can call their bluff. Because right now, if you saw the letter under the letterhead of Iran's, you know, Islamic Republic, an answer to the P5+1 calling them for negotiations, if you read it, you would think that Iran is really the superpower calling on all the other countries to actually join them and share their vision. So I think that there should be some calibration there with what they understand, we understand about them. And bravado and show-off is something which has a very, I mean, it's dangerous, but they have to understand what are the limits.
Yes, please.
Eileen Prusher from the Christian Science Monitor. If I heard correctly just now, you called on the Arab states to invest $10 billion now in the Palestinian economy.
At least, yeah.
So, at least. So, I wanted to ask you, A, are you asking specific countries or a specific body to do that? And B, if you're saying build up the infrastructure now, it sounds a lot like the plan of 2 years to statehood of Palestinian Prime Minister Salam Fayyad. So I'm wondering, you know, if you're saying, you know, political process aside, start building up the capacity and do that actively on the ground, are you supportive of his plan, of his announcement to get to statehood in 2 years?
I'm supportive of that part of the plan. There are some things which I think are not realistic, and first and foremost is a timeline of 2 years. And also I believe that an emergence of a Palestinian future state will only be a result of consensus and successful negotiations. So these are two elements which I fail to see in his plan. But yes, we do like to see the money coming, we do like to see investments, and to the extent possible we are very much supporting this Fayyad economic plan.
And the $10 billion, is that an official call to the Arab League?
Yes, by the way, it's not just by us. I think also the Europeans, every European leader I talk to, certainly the Americans, are telling me that in their visits to the Gulf and when they see Arab leaders, they ask them, you know, it's been for too long that people talk but do not walk. And it's important that they would put the money where their mouth is. And they all say it's their interest to solve the Palestinian problem. They say they have their own political considerations here. This is not enough to talk. They have a lot to contribute, and they can do a lot in that.
Yes, please.
Yes, I'm Laurent Zecchini from Le Monde. Yesterday, Britain and France made an offer to Israel, as far as we can understand. They said, if you accept to create an independent investigation on the Gaza war, we will prevent the Goldstone report to reach the Security Council. What is your answer? And secondly, you said that Iran today has a 10,000 kilometers range missile
Not yet.
capacity.
On their drawing board, yeah. They have 2,500 now.
Okay, thank you. But for the first point?
It's under review.
Okay, on Goldstone?
Under review.
Please.
Yuval Shimron, Nation Broadcasting Network. Danny, there seems to be some grumblings about a possible new intifada being used by the Palestinians to try to do something to move things along. Do you think that's really a possibility? And if so, will Israel react very harshly this time?
A, yes. B, also yes. But to really be realistic, yes, we do see some calls. And it's very disappointing that it's not just, it's not coming from, we don't see it as coming from, you know, bottom up. It's not grassroots. It's planned. First of all, it is planned by the extreme elements. You know, whether it's the Hamas, Islamic Jihad. Unfortunately, we also see some Israeli elements, like the Islamic movement in Israel, trying to do that. And also we do see some relaxation towards that from the Palestinian Authority, whether it's Sheikh Tamimi or whether it's the minister there that is in charge on Jerusalem, that they have actually tried to amplify this. So far, we do not see I would say that the ingredients to a third intifada. I don't think it will be in their interest. I don't think it will be in anybody's interest. But it's first and foremost in the hands of the Palestinian Authority. And if they will continue to act irresponsibly by disseminating all kinds of rumors, which are so baseless, by incitement, by calling on jihad and quote-unquote protecting all the religious sites in Jerusalem, of course this is the wrong thing to do. So far they have not succeeded, but it can get out of hand. I would say that this is why, if we will continue with the economic plan and institution buildings, I think that these are two safety valves that we have against a third intifada. So all in all, I would say that theoretically, of course, it's an option, but I see it now as a very remote option.
Any question? All these, I don't see the. I see just the hand.
What happened with Bloomberg News? What happened with Bloomberg News? There's been a lot of back and forth of low-level and high-level American diplomats in the past few days, and we understand that now Putin is going to go to Egypt again tomorrow. I'm wondering, does this indicate that we're nearing a time when we're going to some kind of solution for starting the talks? What kind of solutions are being discussed? If you can let us in on any of that, and primarily, are we going to have an announcement sooner than you believed before of renewal of talks?
We hope so. I can't give you a definite answer because it's still things in the making, but certainly we will hope so to have some announcement which would be positive.
Are we moving closer?
Are we moving closer? From our perspective, absolutely yes. Yes.
Mathematically, every day we are getting closer. So please, the last question.
Nicola Canton from the Embassy of Australia. wonder how does the proposed deal to supply fuel for the Tehran research reactor fit with your call to shift the dilemma to Iran?
So what is the question?
What effect do you think it will have on, for example, the international community's
Israel?
willingness to pressure Iran?
So far, we're just mere spectators.
As you can understand, he's a diplomat. And I'm sure that you have many other questions that you didn't ask, and many questions that haven't been answered by our experienced diplomat, but I'm sure that you got a lot of information. Thank you, Danny, very much.
Thank you very
Hope
much.
to see you again. The 12th Minister Silvan Shalom will be here.